is this thought mine? Is this trauma even mine? Maybe my dialogue is not even mine. And when I hear it out loud, it's like, whoa, I don't think that's me.
Welcome back to the PMR podcast. My name is Mitch. I'm an addict alcoholic. Super excited for this one, episode 60. We have Nova today joining us. She has been an amazing addition to the team as a producer and editor and friend of ours. So very excited to sit down and talk with you today. And thank you to the Vic James Center for sponsoring this episode and helping us with the studio and connecting us with Nova. So very excited to talk with you today.
Me too.
Yeah.
Long time coming.
I know.
We've been talking about this for like a month now.
Yeah.
And I've been nervous.
Yeah.
Because juggling the technical, I'm recording this right now, plus like spilling my guts. Well, we'll see how much of my guts I spill, but it's a balance, an interesting juggle.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, and we'd like to shoot from the hip and share as much or as little as you'd like. So we like to always say that. And then, well, let's see. You came out to LA when?
I've been in LA since 2011.
2011.
I came out here to go to music school. I'm a music and production multimedia producer. So I came out here to write songs and be a star.
Yeah.
And almost over a decade later, I'm still here. I have an interesting relationship with LA. But I love making things, so I'm toughing it out. And I've built a community here, and from music to podcasts to videos, commercial sync music. I just love making stuff, and so I'm bearing the weather here.
That's fair. Yeah, I hear that, I was told that if you make it past 2 years in LA, you're stuck. So I'm approaching year 3 in February, and I have started to really, really like it. So
Yeah?
Yeah.
But you're on the west side.
Yeah. What's the difference?
I don't know. There's a bunch of pockets of LA that it's very hit or miss.
Yeah.
From one block to the next, you can have a very different experience of LA.
That's fair. I think also it's like my first year here, I didn't try to meet anybody or, didn't build a community. So I was like, this sucks. And I think that's super important, like wherever you live, if you feel connected with like people in that area, that's going to be a better experience, I think.
Oh, yes. I truly believe that LA can be one of the loneliest cities.
Yeah.
It's such a sprawling city. So if you make friends on the east side and you live on the west side, it's like you're not going to see them.
Right.
They're not going to drive to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, community and, being intentional, for me, that's changed the game. I used to be very isolated. And I love your quote about addiction, by the way. Would you like to share what that is?
Addiction is a disease of isolation.
I love that.
Yeah.
I've been saying that since I heard you say that. I hope you don't mind.
Oh, no. Please. I heard it from someone else, not mine.
Okay. Yeah, quote unknown. But yeah. I love that so much because that's been my story. I've been hiding so much of my life. I've been in hiding. Because LA can be an intimidating city, an overwhelming city. For me, I find myself very overstimulated by the noise, by the lights, by the people. And so, I found many of my years when I first came here in my apartment alone, just like feeling like an alien, and not knowing where to start. And fortunately, with my work and some opportunities that have come up, I've like kind of chipped away at just slowly meeting people through, on set, in the studio, and, finding my tribe, which has not been easy. It's been kind of complicated, to be honest. But 2.5 months ago, 8/8 is my recoversary. Is that how you say it?
Oh, yeah.
I found a 12-step program that really resonated with me. And since then, community has a whole new definition for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, LA can be so surface and fake and like, oh, yeah, I love you so much, let's hang out. And then you never do. For me, the 12-step program that I found has just been like such an anchor to my life. Like, I have a scheduled time to connect with others and a resource, to call and text and have people around me. So that's been the monumental shift for me in my life and my experience in LA.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think I'm happy for you, first of all, and I appreciate you sharing that. You shared that with us like early on in meeting, and it's been nice to like after episodes and here and there check in and see how that's going, because it's hard, it's hard work. But I think the plus side is like that you mentioned the community or the shared experience that you find in those rooms, whatever program you're in, that's like the power of it. It's like, I feel like I push community so much, and then when I'm like watching or listening to our podcast, it's like always talking about community, but that's because it's so vital, like mental health or addiction or strife is a disease of isolation. You can put anything in front of that. It's harder by yourself, Can you talk a little bit about like what you've gleaned from just being in those rooms with like, feeling the shared experience and listening to others?
Yeah, I would love to share about that. I'll start with how I discovered it, because I was researching attachment styles, and I came to find out that I am disorganized.
Oh, what's that mean?
Well, there's avoidant, and then there's anxious, which is on the other side of the spectrum, and then there's the disorganized, which is a mixture of both. And in the relationship context, that just means, in layman's terms, oh my God, I need you, but don't get too close. So it's this like weird back and forth of fear of intimacy, but also fear of abandonment. And as I was going down the internet rabbit hole about attachment styles, there was this one YouTuber girl that mentioned 12-step programs being a resource for starting to heal that, because it's trauma triggered. So going down that path of almost like a safe container to start exploring relationships in a platonic way through a program, she just recommended that. So I found my 12-step and I went that day. Like, I Googled it, found a meeting, and I was sitting in a chair like 2 hours later. And that's now my home group. And I just was crying the whole first meeting, because I was looking around just in awe of like, oh my God. Like, they were reading the steps, they were reading some of the program literature, and I was just like, where has this been all my life? Like, I've been starving for this information. This is so me. This is so my story. And I'm looking around and I'm like, everybody else is resonating with this too. Like, this is your story too? Like, what? This is crazy. So it's not just me. I'm not crazy. And that's what they call part of the disease in my program, is like this inner critic telling me that I'm the only one. And that was the first step of me, like my world opening up, being like, whoa, I'm not the only one that thinks this way. And then it's like something just cracked open in me, where parts of myself that I had been exiling, like if you look up a thing called parts work. They call it fragmentation, where when a certain trauma incident happens in a person's life, they end up rejecting a certain part of themselves and exiling it off to an island and being like, oh, that part's not good. I'm never going to show anybody that part again. And it takes energy to abandon a part of yourself. And I don't mean to talk in generalities. This is another thing I'm learning, is how to use my language in a more productive, careful way. Using I statements rather than you or we. So I realized I'd been exiling parts of myself. And in these rooms, there's boundaries. And I realized it's safe to start exploring these parts of me. They're not going to be shamed. They're not going to be told, be quiet, shut down, you're not allowed to feel. And that was new for me. Coming from a dysfunctional family, it was like walking on eggshells. I couldn't be all of who I was. So I think the safe container of a 12-step is just priceless.
I love that. The safe container of a 12-step. Yeah, that's beautiful. I haven't heard the parts thing, but that I can relate to that for sure. I think it's like really, really, really interesting how, especially if you were exposed to trauma or anything like that young, how we like how the brain like compartmentalizes that and like will remove it. Like, have you ever heard of EMDR?
Yes, I have. I haven't tried it yet though.
It's gnarly. I did it a couple times in treatment when I was there. I haven't done it since. I would love to, but EMDR is nuts. Like it will, like after a couple sessions, it brings up, for me, it brought up stuff that I completely forgot about. Like my brain completely was like, we're going to forget this. And like you were saying, I think that when we do that, I think we actively carry it subconsciously until it's addressed, accepted, and released. You know, and it's really wild how that happens, and like how the brain and the body remembers. Like there's like also when I was in treatment, I learned about like birth trauma or anything like that. Like if anything happened when you were born and stuff like that, you can have like pain in that area, whatever it was, up until, you know, it's addressed, which is nuts. Like some girl that I was in treatment with had like chronic neck pain, and then found out, I don't know if it's directly linked, but like found out that her umbilical cord was like wrapped around her neck when she was born or something. And she would like feel like she was being like when she had panic attacks, she would feel like she was being choked. And like that might have been tied to that. So I think all that stuff is really gnarly. And I love that you talk about, I love that we're talking about other 12-step programs because there's a ton. I've learned about a ton extra ones this year. When my first and only understanding for a while was just, you know, the alcoholic 12-step program. And then I heard about NA, which is for narcotics, and then Al-Anon, which is for like family members or friends of alcoholics. And those were the three that I really knew for a long time. And then working in treatment the last 9 months, I've heard about, you know, so many more, which is beautiful because personally, I feel like the 12-step program, like, and they all kind of mirror each other in varying ways, is really like moral cleansing and soul cleansing and to different levels, you know. It's just like a beautiful process, you know, and it's a beautiful process to do with others, you know. That's the other thing. So I think I'm really excited to talk with you today, and I appreciate you sharing, you know, all that you just shared, because I think it's important if someone's listening and they can't relate to Andrew and I or some of our guests in terms of like drug and alcohol abuse, maybe they're on the flip side. Maybe they have a family member. There's like emotions anonymous. There's like codependent anonymous. There's a lot, and at the root of all of it is just community, So that's the cool part. It doesn't have to be this like, that's what my thing with like the anonymous thing always was like, feels so gilded or hidden. It's really not. It's really not. But I have come to a much more mature or educated view on the anonymity part, and I fully understand it. I don't fully understand it. I feel like I understand it more today than I did even a month ago. Like group anonymity and individual anonymity and the humility part and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah. I relate a lot to what you say, and I think it is important for 12 steps to be talked about more, different programs, because I am coming to believe that I believe there could be a 12-step program for just about anyone.
Yeah.
And when you look at addictions and, the current state society is in, I think there's a lot more forms of addiction than substance abuse. In my program, we talk about addiction to excitement. We talk about addiction to emotions and this inner drugstore of chemicals and hormones that,
dopamine.
Yep, that we are addicted to. It's like creating drama is a form of, addiction. And I'm realizing for me, it's so interesting. I'm so new to this program, but there's this concept of emotional sobriety and how instead of being so wrapped in the excitement and the adrenaline, making decisions from a place of clarity and stillness is new to me. Like, I've been in it. I've been in the woods with that, and hiding it well. Like, I'm very good at masking. I'm very good at looking composed. I'm very good at staying calm under pressure. But then in my own private time, isolating and self-harming and, being in my chaos in my cave, and, dealing with the aftermath of, the energy that it takes to appear composed and appear healthy. And so addiction is an interesting topic because, especially in today's world with social media and being productive with work, relationships, and, unhealthy enmeshment and codependency, like, there's so many forms of addiction that is so interesting to look at the psychology. And I'm just fascinated by the human experience because it's so complex. It's so complex. And so for me, 12-step programs have just created structure and understanding and awareness and have put a spotlight on things that I would have never been able to sift through and understand just inside my head.
Yeah.
And that's why I think community and the whole sharing piece is so important. The second I start getting these ideas and these thoughts and the confusing emotions out of my person, my internal world, it makes so much more sense. Yeah. Like, I can actually do something with that now. I can actually be like, oh, is this thought mine? Is this trauma even mine? Is this shame even mine? Or is this just something I heard from someone else or grew up and accidentally got from my mom or my dad? Like, maybe my dialogue is not even mine. And when I hear it out loud, it's like, whoa, I don't think that's me. And there's like this cathartic release and like, whoa, well then what is?
Maybe my dialogue is not even me. Damn.
Yeah.
That blew my mind real quick because I relate to that. Definitely. I have to write that down.
Here, pen?
yeah, let's see. But no, I completely agree. I think there's so much to be discovered. When you talk about emotional sobriety, something I've been looking into and talking about and learning more about recently is like addiction. You have a substance, or for me, I had substances, and I think was addicted to the drama, fighting, lying, cheating, stealing, getting things over on people. All of those produced like dopamine highs for me. So, but the ones that stood out the most, the ones that are most recognizable is like, I think to the naked eye is like, oh, you have a drinking problem. Oh, you have a drug problem, because that's like so criminalized or like obvious, I guess. And so I think like for me, my 12-step program, we stop those substances, right? And then we're in the pursuit of emotional sobriety, I think. Like, I think we talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago. It was like, Andrew and I were saying, like, it's seemingly easier to take away the substances. The hard work is really like the emotional sobriety, the getting rid of the lying, cheating, stealing, all that stuff, because that stuff is like ingrained. And it comes to a point, and this is like going to sound weird, but it's like, well, if you take the substances away, like I'm still going to have fun, especially when I was early in recovery and wasn't working a program. I was like, well, I can't drink and I can't do any drugs, but I still have fun, like deceiving people and, being a bad human. And I got highs that way, So I think I love that you talk about the emotional sobriety, because especially in prolonged recovery, that's basically, the majority of the conversation with my home group and most 12-step meetings, the ones that I go to, is emotional sobriety, because people with prolonged recovery, not that relapse becomes less likely. I'm not trying to say that, but it's always there. I'll always respect it. It's always a possibility. And that's just like a healthy fear that I keep, but it just turns more to like day-to-day, friend interactions, family interactions, people interactions, and how you carry yourself. It becomes more and more N-word. And Andrew and I have talked about like God willing, I'll get 7 years clean and sober on November 11th. And we've talked about how the microscope into my like, emotional sobriety has just gotten like tighter and tighter, like, so I just feel the more in touch I get with myself, the more I can like tell when I'm off, or, be upset if I did something, or, try to change that. But
yeah, noticing those cues and reflecting inward. Wow, that's big stuff, and that's scary, brave stuff. For me, I've been using my external world as a distraction because going inward was too challenging for a very long time. I've been mostly addicted to my work, and I thought, because that's like good and healthy, it's not bad. But I'm starting to realize that anything out of balance and to extremes is unhealthy and is a form of distraction. And through this program, I've been realizing where I'm out of balance. Another form of addiction for me has been, I was diagnosed with ADHD like 5 years ago. And they medicated me. And I felt great, because it numbed me out and it cut my thoughts off. I didn't even have to think about anything. And for me, I'm realizing now that that's a form of avoidance. And now coming back to me and my feelings and my sensations and my body, I'm realizing how much I was avoiding, including good stuff, like the real me, like my emotions. Like, I really do believe emotions hold information. And anytime I've been decisively going through them rather than avoiding them, or just trying to cope or numb or whatever,
Yeah.
the more I'm realizing, like, there's been unprocessed trauma just sitting there all the time, like heavy on my chest shit. And I think the way to emotional sobriety is through the emotions first, but like genuinely and honestly sitting with them. And for me, I get visions. Yesterday I went through like a really big purge, and I had like a vision of when I was 8, and something that happened in my family that I've never processed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a guttural, like shaking, like purge. And I was like texting some of my fellow travelers from my program, and he kind of like walked me through a journaling exercise where you just press really hard, and like every thought that comes out, just like let it flow on paper, like really press into that. And I got it out of me. I feel lighter. And I think I have more of that to do. I think I have more. But there's something called somatic therapy and experiencing too, which is this like convulsing, like that the theory that trauma is actually held physically within the body, within the nervous system, within our muscle tissues. Mm-hmm. And I've not tried that yet. I'm very excited to try. But just the knowledge that I've heard from that, I was like, when I was crying yesterday and I felt the urge, because it's our natural instinct as mammals to like, when trauma happens, to like convulse. It happens like in the animal kingdom. We're the only ones that don't do it. We just hold it and harbor it. And so,
I got a lot of convulsing to do.
Shake it out. But yeah, so since I've learned that, like anytime I cry, I just let myself like have a tantrum, and it feels better. I'm feeling better.
I love that. That's good. We have this thing called Reiki. Yeah, with my treatment center.
My best friend does that.
It's dope. I haven't done it, but all the clients that we've done it, like some of them had like, they've told me like literally life-changing experience.
That's interesting, yeah.
Like, but I believe in all that stuff, and I've seen it work. You know, I think that's really cool. And I like that you said like the only way to process some of that is through it. And the avoidance piece is like, can't relate more than that, like medication. Like, Andrew and Andrew said this too, similarly. Like, I was prescribed Ritalin young, and then once that maxed out, moved to Adderall, and then figured out a way to get a max level of that. I mean, I'm just taking low level methamphetamine. That's what Adderall is. Right. That's what Ritalin is. And all substance abuse is self-medication, really. Self-medication and avoidance. And then I can see, like treating yourself poorly in terms of like that. I was just talking to my sponsor about like self-hate and how self-hate transfers over to you once you're in recovery. Like, if you loved yourself, I wouldn't be doing all the substances and drinking as I was. So once I took the substances away, the self-hate was still there. It's not just like, oh, I love myself now. So that's like what we're actively working on as well, on top of the other stuff. It's like self-love, loving other people, learning how to, I was first told, until you figure out how to love yourself, love others in the room. And I was like, that makes no sense. I was like, I can't understand that. Why would I not put myself first? Because there's a lot of stuff today that's like self-love, take a self-care day, stuff like that. And the more I started to listen, and the more I started to try to love others, call others, ask them how they're doing, get outside of myself. I did learn how to love myself through loving others, and that was really a twist for me.
Yeah, seeing it in practice outside of yourself.
Yeah.
You see it.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, that was kind of a shitty thing to say to that person. Like,
Right.
Do I say that to myself? Like,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I also love that you talked about the masks thing, because I did a whole paper in college on masks while I was in active addiction. was like my first writing class, and ended up getting sober, going to rehab, getting sober, coming back, and becoming a writing major. But I did this whole paper on masks and wearing masks and like my high school, stuff like that. I feel like I was mask wearing for a long time. Like, who am I in this situation? Who am I in this situation? Who do I need to be in this situation? And it is so draining, like you were saying. Like, and it is prevalent everywhere, especially, I hate to like hate on LA, but it feels a little bit more maskier here than anywhere else I've been, at least. Just in terms of like, you know, putting out this image or.
Well, everybody wants something.
Right, yeah.
And we've all become master salesmen. Yeah. We're like, what do I need to be in order to get what I need from you?
Like, nice to meet you, what can I get from you?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts.
But it's not everyone that I've met, but I've had a couple where I was like, damn. Like, or we'll be hidden behind, it'll be like, nice to meet you, I want to work with you, and then the real intentions will come out.
Right.
You know, I'd rather you just say it in the beginning.
And that's been scary for me as a traumatized person. Like,
yeah.
I thought I lost trust in myself. I started losing trust in other people. It's like, oh my God, what do I have now? Who do I trust now?
Yeah.
So that's been very complicated to navigate. I wanted to go back to the ADHD piece for just a moment, because since starting this program, it talks a lot about CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and how that is commonly misdiagnosed, or ADHD is commonly misdiagnosed, they say it's ADHD, but it's really some like post-traumatic, yeah.
I did watch something about ADHD and like a new take on it recently from a doctor saying that like ADHD, and this feels like it would be in the trauma neighborhood as well, but it's like if you were a child that was like semi-neglected or inferred neglection, like that's a really interesting part about trauma to me, is that it doesn't need to be like, you know, you got in a huge car accident or, you know, anything like physical abuse or anything like that. It really doesn't. It's like how the child infers the trauma, which is all case by case, you know. So no one can tell you, you know, that's not a traumatic experience, because if that's how you experienced it, then it is. And I think it's like that he was talking about young children in the developmental stage, you know, like I was saying, inferring neglect and or being around things that they were experiencing as traumatic. The brain at that age will distract the child. And so
to survive
that moment, or to survive those continuous moments, right?
Fantasy is very powerful.
Exactly. And so I think that's a really, really interesting look at ADHD, because then as that progresses, it's a coping skill. Like ADHD is a coping skill that then turns into like, you know, middle school, high school, you can't concentrate because you've used that coping skill. That's an ingrained, you know, coping skill. I think that's like a fascinating look at ADHD.
I love that perspective. Yeah. I had a song called ADHD AF.
Let's go.
So I identified as ADHD for a very long time. But it's so interesting to do, you know, as I do more research and realizing that it really is just a coping mechanism that my brain has adapted to trauma states.
Yeah.
And the piece that has really been eye-opening to me and made me realize my part in all of this is my reactions to the trauma were almost worse than trauma themselves sometimes. Like, I added insult to injury by self-harming, self-isolating, acting out in certain ways where I started to distrust myself in response to losing trust for someone else, an external situation. And that's what really put me in a, you know, double bind in my life. It's like, oh, I can't trust you. Okay, now I'm going to act super erratic towards myself and lose trust in myself too. And wow, did that really make me feel powerless. It was like a learned helplessness. It's like I can't trust others and I can't trust myself, so I'm fucked. And it made me very angry. And it really made me just spite the world. Like I wanted to prove everyone wrong, and it just gave me an edge, and it took me from my it took my innocence, honestly. And I'm learning, as I'm learning all of these things, I'm like decorrupting myself, and I'm realizing that my innocent, pure, like inner child is still so strong and so alive in me. And it's my job to reparent her back to, you know, feeling safe and coming out and being like, hey, this is a loving environment now. Like, I'm not going to let you get hurt again. And even if you do, I got you now. And like that kind of dialogue with myself, as schizo as it sounds, is like what I need, like for the real parts of me to come back out and feel safe in the world again.
That's beautiful. You articulate that so well. I think that's yeah. I think that's I relate to that, and I think I'm just happy for you that you see that, feel that, and you're actively working towards it. You know, like that's like the best thing you could possibly do. You know, and I think it's important that you, something I forgot to mention, you said like when you were having that experience like yesterday or something, that you called someone in your program. Wanted to highlight that because that's huge, you know, that you did that.
Past me wouldn't have.
Yeah. And
past me would have just gone down the hole deeper.
And so that's something to highlight for yourself, and you know, tell yourself you're proud of, because reaching out in those moments is stacking positive experiences, you know, or stacking positive growth that you can highlight and say, look, I did do this. This was happening. I reached out to someone. They helped me. I did what they suggested, and I feel better. You know, it's really important for us in recovery to stack those experiences to continue to build that foundation that you're talking about. You know.
Not to mention another song title, but I have a song called Ego Death that's going to come out sometime this year.
Let's go.
And that's what it took for me. It took a major ego death for me to even admit that, okay, I have problems and I need help. Like, it's tough. I've been a prideful person where it's like, I want to look like I'm put together. And also, I don't want to burden anybody with my shit. Like, I need to figure this out myself. Otherwise, I'm going to look stupid.
I don't know about that, but I understand.
But that's where I felt,
right.
You know?
Yeah.
And then so now reaching out, it's a matter of removing my ego and being like, you know what? I do need help. I need to talk to someone. And we're tribal people. Like, the human race needs others. Like, it's just so, this modern society is not equipped. It's not conducive to natural human, like, biology.
Yeah. Well, and the flip side too is that whoever you reached out to, you helped them too, because you provided them an opportunity to be of service to you.
Great point.
You know what I mean? And it's like, that is the beauty of, one of the other beauties of 12-step or recovery programs in general.
Yes.
You know, someone helping another person. You know, if I'm having a bad day, call a sponsee, call somebody and say, how are you doing? They tell me how they're doing. I get outside of myself. We're helping each other, you know.
Yeah, that inner critic saying that I'm being a burden to them, it's just a liar.
Yeah, I was just talking to a guy newer in the program yesterday, and he was like, I bet you hate when I call you. And I was like, bro, when you call me, I smile. Like, I love talking to you, regardless of what's going on. You know, you're not a burden. I'm not like, oh, I have to pick up this call. That's not how it is. You help me probably more than I help you, you know. And my sponsor has told me that too. And I think that's a beautiful kind of like family tree in that way. Definitely.
Yeah, slightly outside of the scope of 12 Steps, I read a book called The Four Agreements.
I've been told to read that. So
oh my God, it's so good. One of the agreements is don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the inner critic really starts to go crazy, is it just makes assumptions about everything. And so I'm learning to just ask and clarify or state my stance.
Yeah.
And it's like, reality is it's sometimes so far from what I assumed that it's like, whoa, does it like throw me back in line? And like, wow.
Yeah.
My inner critic will go off on some story for days.
Oh, me too.
And then it's like, wait, that's not even close to reality? What?
And on like perception of others, that was my big thing. I always felt like people hated me, didn't like me, I shouldn't be here, I'm not a part of, you know, those were I've worked very hard on my internal monologue over the years, very hard. Gotten into a place where it's much more positive, uplifting. But But that's something my sponsor has taught me too, big time, and a couple other people, is like, I was like, I feel like that guy doesn't like me. I feel like that person hates me. And my sponsor would be like, did he say that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, did he go out and say that? No. Have you talked to him? No.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'll make up the craziest story about you. I could be like, he wants to hit me with a wrench when I turn around.
Yeah.
I'll make up some crazy story and I never even talk to you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my head goes. And so it is really important not to make assumptions to and not get stuck in that fantasy land of like making up something that's like really just a sneaky way to continue that self-hate. And it really, I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to. So it's interesting. They talk about the disease being like conniving and deceptive, you know, and as your recovery goes, it becomes more, you know, advanced at these trickery, you know, which is interesting. You know, it has really, really helped me to split my brain, and this sounds crazy too. I kind of pick and choose if I tell this, but typically only people in the program, but it's like, I really have split my sober monologue, internal monologue / brain, and my addiction monologue / brain. So I associate internally anything negative, or literally just anything negative or something that I wouldn't, you know, align myself with today, as my addiction or my addicted brain, and addicted monologue, and then, you know, positive, all that stuff as the sober version. And I've heard a couple other people in the program do that, like actively split internally, just as a way to more like make it more clear, I guess, because it can become early in recovery too, it can become so blended, like what you're hearing, like I was talking about earlier, like
who's saying what now?
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's like there's a lot of stuff going on. So it's like, you know, is this negative thought like a sober thought, you know, or is this like something else trying to bring me back, you know?
And it's interesting, like I find myself through my journey leaning on the side of negative as a prevention mechanism. That, oh, well, if I think negatively before the bad thing happens, then I'm saving myself from the surprise of like getting caught off guard, you know? And that perpetual state of negativity was almost like an addiction, because it's like, hey, at least I'm prepared for the worst.
Yeah.
But then I just end up living in constant negativity, and I'm realizing that's no way to live. Like, because usually, I mean, I don't want to say this always, but usually the bad thing doesn't happen.
Yep.
And I just spend my whole life in the negative thing just in case.
That's really true.
Yeah. So I like the split that you talk about. And in my program, it's the inner critic is the negative, and then the inner loving parent is the positive, where it's like, okay, we're going to reparent ourselves and be a loving voice of a nurturing figure that we didn't have growing up. And we're going to tell that inner critic, okay, you go in the back seat, you know, you can look out the window and look for threats and, you know, doomsday it out over there, but over here, you know, we're going to protect our inner child and our innocence and walk ourselves back from the ledge a little bit. Be like, you know what, it's okay, honey, you're safe, like, I got you, kiddo. And just like little things like that, it's so crazy, just those words. Instantly I take a deep breath and I just, okay, everything's okay. I don't have to live in that hypervigilance 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I never knew that I had the power to make myself feel safe in the world.
That's beautiful. You know, my sponsor says that I've used a lot that is very comforting to me, because I relate a lot to what you're sharing with the inner child work. I probably need to do some more of that. But telling myself, you know, close my eyes or whatever and tell myself, like, everything, I've always been provided for in one way or another, always. You know, if I really look at it, I've always been provided for. I've always been taken care of. Everything right now is okay. You know, those three, and reciting those, you know, for however long I need to, you know, while breathing, has been very grounding and very powerful for me, especially in like the last, like, I think year. I've been really doing that. If I feel too far this way or too far that way, you know, I really have. I've always been, you know, something has been watching out for me, whether it was like, you know, higher power or what, you know, something has always been there, because I'm here today. And that's very comforting, because I will, like you were kind of saying too, I will stack up all of these other things to point to. One of the things I like to say in our meetings is like, you ask somebody who went to a baseball game that's early in the program, or even however long in the program, like, how's the baseball game? They'd say, I got my wallet stolen, They highlight only bad, I have this beautiful time at a baseball game or whatever, and the only thing I want to share with you is that, I dropped my popcorn. It's really interesting what we choose to notice and remember and recognize. Pushing yourself to realize like all the good is much harder than pushing yourself to realize all the bad. I mean, I can find all the bad, right? Like this thingy, like the microphone today fell, and it could be like, oh, like that's the only bad thing. But you know what? That would rob me of the experience of having like a great, time talking with you. You know what I mean? So really trying to remember or highlight all the beautiful things that have happened. Yeah.
Sadly, I believe we've been conditioned out of the knowledge that we have the power to choose. In our society, even just with how the news is laid out and what gets screen time and what is on the top of our news feed,
very negative.
There's very negative stories usually highlighted.
It's true.
There may be a collective addiction to conflict. I don't know. But it just kind of seems to me that that's kind of the typical go-to currently. And I just want to remind myself right now in this moment that I have the choice to focus on anything that I want. And doesn't have to be fantasy. It doesn't have to be fake. Like, I can choose to see reality square in the eye. And from my experience, the universal truth is it all is, like it's both. It's both negative and positive at the same time. There's a neutrality that is truth.
Yeah.
And so if that is true, then why not choose the positive? And I some people talk about, toxic positivity. It's like, yeah, sure, you can potentially start leaning towards Delulu land,
right,
where you're not rooted in reality at all. But again, it's that balance and coming back to that neutral place as much as possible. And for me, neutrality means peace and faith and a trust in the unknown. And for me, that's where I'm finding serenity, is that no matter what I decide, there's going to be a net. And there's going to be a purpose or a lesson or whatever. And so there's no right or wrong, black or white. It's those extremes that I feel is where addiction breeds.
I love that. Very, very, very true. Yeah. Could not agree more with you on that. Addictions, extremes, for sure. It's like very black and white thinking for me is something that I've also been working on for the last couple of years. Like, yes, no. Actually, there is a middle, and the middle is probably the better option for you.
It's not very satisfying, though, honestly. Honestly, it's more satisfying to be like, oh, it's all bad and it's all good. But it's like, the middle ground, it's probably where we find the real answer for ourselves to have a happy life.
Yeah.
At least to feel better,
That's true. Have you been introduced or a belief in higher power or anything like that?
Yeah, today, this week's reading was all about that, and meditating and, coming into silence to, wait to hear that and the guidance. And it's interesting. I've always considered myself a very spiritual person. I've always considered myself to have a very personal relationship with God, not really aligning with many, religions or organized spiritual groups or anything like that, but just my own personal connection, my own little line of communication. But through this program, that's changed a little. I'm honestly in kind of like a no man's land with it right now. It's growing in a way that I can't fully articulate yet. So I went on a retreat this last weekend with my 12-step. And there was this one workshop where there was like this labyrinth maze made out of rocks in the middle of Big Bear. And we were just supposed to walk through this labyrinth and in silence, slowly, and see what came up. And it doesn't sound like that crazy. I was like, oh, whatever, we're just gonna be walking in nature, basically. So many parts of myself came up. My inner critic was there, like, oh, this thing is so stupid, or like, whoa, it feels like I haven't made any progress, but I've been walking for a while. Like, all these things came up. And by the time I got to the center, there was this very paradoxical moment where I felt like everything had changed about me since starting from the beginning of that labyrinth, yet there was this higher version of me, like a spirit version of me, where nothing had changed at all, where there was just this rock. And in that moment, it just felt like this perfect presence of that blended everything knowing inside of me that's like never changing because it all already is. And then the human version of me where along this timeline of space, everything changes in every moment. And it was just a very paradoxical moment. And for me, I feel like there's a thread there that I'm going to continue exploring, where it's like, I just felt very rooted that I know everything and I know nothing at the same time. I think that might be where my higher self or my higher power is in that duality. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it does.
Yeah.
More than anything else.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the journey I'm on right now, and I'm like, whew, I'm just holding on. I'm just trying to free fall into it and let like what's supposed to be mine show up.
Yeah.
But I don't fully understand that right now.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I'm just embracing the unknown.
Oh yeah. That's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I agree too. I mean, I have an idea of what my higher power is, and I have a faith in that higher power, you know, watching over me, taking care of me, and putting me in experiences, and rocking and rolling from there, you know.
That's all you can do.
Yeah, I think it's, for me, that's just like, we talked about it a little bit, just getting outside of yourself or me or what I need, you know. Like, that's been very powerful, you know. I have identified myself as my own worst enemy, you know, or can be, you know. And so a belief in a higher power helps relieve me of that. And sometimes we're different. I have a better connection or not as good of a connection. You know, there's things that I can do, prayer, meditation, stuff like that to help, like we call it conscious contact with our higher power. Yeah.
Yeah, because in my world, with what you just said, if I were to apply my theory to the universe, to what you just said, is if it's true that you're your own worst enemy at times, then the opposite is true as well. You're also your best friend.
I needed that. That's true.
Both are true.
I agree. And
you get to choose each moment.
I love that you said that, because at my meeting on Tuesday, my home group, I shared to someone else who was talking about, like, I always wait till the last minute. I always take as much as I can get, or I always wait until my back's up against the wall. And I shared with this guy, and I was like, I've tried to stop using definitives, you know, like always, or repeating the story that I tell myself, because my body and myself will believe that, you know, if I say that I always do this, or I always do that, or I never show up on time, or I never, you know, any definitives. I'm comparing to the past, you know, and I'm using select experiences and continuing the cycle. And I just did it, and you caught me. So I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Bringing you back to center.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the continuation of growth, but that's dope.
I hope you remind me when I say shit like that too, please. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right.
Catching is the biggest thing. For me, now, when I hear stuff like that, I stop myself mid-sentence and I'm like, okay, well, let's just hold up. It always, never, those are shouldas. I'm not going to should all over myself today.
Yeah.
Let's get back here for a second. And I'm like starting to learn how to train myself to be like, instead of never something or I always, it's just like, oh, like I just pump the brakes, and it's like, how else could I say that to make it more true? Because when it's always or never, there's always exceptions.
Yeah. That's right.
So it's like, you know, I'm starting to catch myself with that lingo too, because it takes me down a path of extremes,
Yeah.
which is going to feed the inner critic and take me down to no man's land of self-shame. So let's not go there, Nova, today.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I agree.
It's so crazy how language is so powerful.
Oh yeah.
Like our words.
Especially when it's spoken to.
That's one of the other agreements of the 4 agreements. You're going to love this book.
I know I need it.
Be impeccable with your word.
Mm.
That's one of the other agreements. And so now today, it's like I'm going to choose the words that best serve me. What do I want manifested? Because if I'm not saying that, there's no chance it's going to be. So I'm starting to train myself to use my words very carefully, because that creates my entire projection of how I see the world.
Yeah. It's interesting too. I mean, my sponsor would suggest to me to ask my higher power to give me the words to serve.
Beautiful.
You know, for me, I want to speak more in we or us terms. I think. I'm not sure. I think I heard that from someone else, and then started to do that just to see what that would feel like.
I don't fully understand it all either.
Yeah. I'm not understanding it as I'm saying it.
I think what we're talking about, though, is from a book called Nonviolent Communication, which I have not read yet, but I've heard that there's a way to talk that isn't putting people on defense. It actually puts people off guard and like helps open up the conversation for true connection.
Yeah.
I don't know all the skills of that yet, but I do know that talking in generalities or being like, oh, you know how everything goes and you always do this, and like, not in a blaming way, but just like we start talking in generalities, like, and in you statements and we statements, and that can kind of subconsciously put the other person on guard that, oh, it's blame, they're blaming something outside of themselves. And so what I'm learning to do right now on my journey is just talk for myself, because I can't tell anybody else's experience for them.
That makes sense.
And then that, like, when I start being like you, this is us, we, whatever, then it makes it sound like I'm above someone else, like I know better for that person, and I don't.
Right.
Like, I can't talk for anybody but me. So right now on my journey, with how much I know about this lingo stuff, I'm trying just to talk for myself.
That makes sense.
And not tell someone else's story, because I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what Mitch feels today. Yeah. I can't speak for you.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That's fair. Yeah, I think I'll like text my friends and be like, "How we doing?" You know, or stuff like that.
Oh, well, that's inclusive. You know, wanting to bring people together. I like that.
Yeah, it's been wonderful talking with you.
So cool.
Absolutely loved it. Is there anything
really
else?
Deep.
Yeah, we did. We got after it.
Yeah.
That was fast. I checked like a little bit ago. We can bang down an hour.
Love it.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Or we're back up.
Thank you, Mitch. I guess I'd just like to say how thankful I am to be a part of all of this. You know, I make music. I'm in the music industry. I'm an artist. I have songs out there online. Just look up Shinova. But like conversations like this is what inspires me. Like, people ask like, oh, what's your inspiration? Why do you do music? And it's like, it's this. I'm so fascinated by using, you know, like, it's just fascinating to me, life and the world. And I'm just an observer of all of this, like, wow. And as an artist, I feel like it's my responsibility to share what my perspective is, because only I can. And that's what I hope to do as an artist and a humaning, is just to inspire and encourage others to share their experiences, because only they can. And that's what I think 12-step programs do. Like, it helps us explore our unique perspectives and start learning how to share. and connect. And so I'm just excited to be a part of this because this is real connection. This is real humaning, in my opinion.
I agree.
I don't want that surface shit.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the weather. I don't want to talk about career. I don't talk about what I'm going to get from you and what you're going to get from me.
Yeah.
I want to talk about what humaning means.
Yeah.
And like how we can do that better and feel better in the process. And so that's what my art's about. That's what my podcast is about, House of Consciousness, which has kind of been on pause because I've been focusing on other things, and myself, because I have to be my number one fan. No one else will be if I'm not. So I've been doing the work, I'm healing, and this whole recovery journey, I just thank you, Mitch and Andrew and Spirit today, for bringing light to what recovery is about. And the Big James Center is that too, you know? It's like, how can we be better, you know, and together, like exploring that journey together of what recovery means. And prevention's like a huge thing that like, I wish I had resources like this growing up. I don't think I would have gone down far, you know, as far down the hole as I went if I had communities like this. So I'm just so appreciative and just feel so aligned. Like I would have never thought I'd be here, but it all works out.
It all works out and it all happens as it should. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing so openly and honestly today. Really appreciate it. I think your story is going to touch a lot of people and touch me, so I appreciate you sharing. Thank you to the Big James Center for sponsoring this episode. They do have their annual fundraiser on November 12th. I believe it's 3 to 5. It's going to be lit. They have sips and chips. Sips and chips.
Sips and chips and dips.
Sips and chips and dips.
I'll be there.
Nova will be there.
I'm going to be videographing
That's
the
electric.
whole thing.
Yeah, Nova will be there. But check out the Big James Center website or Instagram for information, details on that. But yeah, thank you, Nova. Appreciate you. This is a beautiful episode, so super, super excited to drop this one in the next couple days. But
I'll edit it
yeah,
when I get home.
Nova's doing a ton for this episode. She's the guest, as well as the editor, as well as the producer.
Yeah.
So very grateful for you. Thank you. This has been episode 60 of the PMR podcast. We will keep coming back. Thank you.
Coming back, yeah! I'm so proud of us. We did so good.
No, you killed it.
Thank you.
Absolutely killed it.